Israel confirms it has the list of hostages to be released on the final day for the pause in the fighting. The two-day extension to the war in the pause between Israel and Hamas is set to expire, but talks on a further extension continue. Right now, the hostages who were freed yesterday are being treated in hospital.
Some of them had complex underlying illnesses, and some suffered injuries when they were abducted or during their time in captivity. Their medical condition is complex, and they will need further medical treatment and attention, but there is no immediate danger.
This is video from Hamas showing the 10 Israeli hostages as they were handed over, all of them women, the oldest 84, the youngest 17. 2 Thai nationals were also in the latest group. Now, this is more from the hostage release as shown on Egyptian television. Israeli media are reporting another 10 Israelis are expected to be freed today, as well as 2 hostages with Russian citizenship. In exchange, Israel is set to free more Palestinian detainees. Now, this is the scene when 30 detainees were released yesterday and returned to the West Bank.
بنتمنى أن كل الأسرى يكونوا بهاي اللحظات شعبنا البطل اللي بيستقبلهم من 5 أيام. نتمنى هاي الهدنة تمتد لوقف إطلاق النار بشكل كامل، ونتمنى حرية شعبنا البطل.
So far, 180 Palestinian detainees have been released under the agreement, all of them young women and teenagers. And we have some emotional scenes here as 2 Palestinian boys, 14 and 15, were reunited with their families. Most of the teens now freed were accused of throwing stones and firebombs in confrontations with Israeli forces. Many had been held without charge under administrative detention. We're going to begin our coverage this hour with Briar Stewart, part of our CBC News team in Jerusalem. And Briar, with the pause set to expire at some point and the fighting in Gaza set to resume, we're getting some fresh warnings now about the humanitarian conditions. What are we now hearing?
That's right. The World Health Organization has spoken again today just about how disease can really end up being a bigger killer than the war itself. They say more than 100,000 people are suffering from respiratory infections. Tens of thousands of people have diarrhea. And this is all, of course, because of overcrowding. People are sheltering wherever they can, particularly in the south. Some are in tents, and it's increasingly rainy and soggy, so it's very difficult conditions. And really, during this pause, it was structured so more aid could come in, and more aid is coming in. The U.S. says about 240 trucks a day, but UN officials say it's nowhere near enough. And the UN agency that works in Gaza for Palestinian refugees says they have been able to bring some aid up into the Jabalia camp where people are still living. And the spokesperson for the UN there said that as he was driving through Gaza City, some parts of it are completely destroyed. All there is rubble and twisted metal and just silence. And then in other parts, he says buildings look untouched and people are living there, but there's no power and very little access to clean water. And there is a big concern among people that what could come next. I mean, there are talks underway about this temporary truce being extended for another 2 days, potentially, 3 or 4. But we know that Israel has consistently said they are going to resume its fight against Hamas. And part of that includes going towards the south, even launching a ground operation. And the UN has said that it would be just catastrophic because you have so many people that have moved from the north to the south, 1.3 million people that have been displaced. And if the south comes under attack and you have street battles playing out in neighborhoods, there really is no place for people to go. Well, as there is a break in fighting right now in Gaza, that's not the case in the West Bank and in some respects East Jerusalem, where there have been nightly raids, reports of gunfire, and that was the case last night into the Jenin refugee camp in the West Bank. It seems that it happened all through the night. Reports of gunfire, and there are reports coming out that Palestinians have been killed. We have not been able to verify them ourselves at the moment, but certainly that's just kind of the latest clash that we're seeing, and in the increase in violence that has been happening since October 7th.
Breyer, in the past hour, we got a briefing from an Israeli government spokesperson on the hostage negotiations. What is the latest there?
Well, that's right. And what he had said was so far, 86 hostages have been freed, and there are 161 still in Gaza. And the vast majority of those are men, but there are still 4 children left in captivity. And we know that 2 of those children are among the very youngest, 10-month-old Kafir Bibas and his 4-year-old brother Ariel. And this is a family where the whole family was taken hostage, and the relatives have basically learned through the Israeli military that Hamas has essentially transferred the family to another militant group, and they believe that's why they haven't been released so far under the agreement. And there have been various reports about how many hostages might not be under Hamas's direct control, and I did speak to the Israeli government spokesperson about that, and here's a little of what he had to say.
We hold Hamas fully responsible for the October 7th atrocities, for the abduction of everyone inside the Gaza Strip. We're demanding that Hamas bring them back and do everything in order to bring them back. Hamas are the de facto governing authorities of the Gaza Strip. They have been for the last 16 years, and they bear full responsibility for the abduction of Israeli hostages into their territory on October 7th.
Now, there is a report from Agence France-Presse who said that Hamas has offered to extend this temporary truce for 4 more days, which would mean more hostages would be released. And the Hamas official reportedly said that that would include hostages that are, currently in the care of other militant groups. But of course, at the moment, it is really uncertain. And we know that there are negotiations going on between Israel, Qatar, and U.S. officials.
And we're waiting for any updates on those talks and negotiations. Breyer, thank you very much. We'll be back to you for any updated information, obviously. Breyer Stewart live in Jerusalem for us this hour.